Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today to talk with Neil Blanchett of My Dying Bride, not about the band, not about another album or another EP. You guys are always surprising us with new releases lately, but to talk about you, the man, the guitar player. How's it going?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get started with your 5 most influential guitar players, because that's what we're here to talk about, let's go back a little bit into the vault. Do you remember how old were you when you picked up your first guitar?
Yes, I was really young actually. I was around 11 years old actually. My father, we've always had guitars in the house because he's a guitar player himself, and I was never interested when I was a kid. It was always only things that interested me was Star Wars, all the things in the 80s that 10 and 11-year-olds are into. And then I'd be at school and the careers people had always asked me, what do you want to do when you're older? And I'd be like, I have not a clue, Anyway, I started to get listening to metal music. I heard various tracks on the radio, and my sister, she had a compilation cassette of various 80s music, and there was an Iron Maiden track on there. And I heard that, and I was like, "What is that?" And something just happened, and I was wow. Anyway, I bugged my parents, Christmas time. I want some of this music, Anyway, Christmas time, this is what I got.
Oh, that's a great album.
Yeah, and I listened to this. I played it to death. This is actually the second copy. It was a cassette that I received, but that wore out years and years ago because I just played it over and over again. And and then that's how I got started listening to music. And then my parents had bought me the Live After Death VHS cassette, the live performance. And I remember seeing that, and I saw Adrian Smith and Dave Murray playing them songs. And I said, that is what I want to do. There was no interest in playing the drums or being a singer or anything. Guitar, that was my thing. And I remember saying to my dad, right, you've got to teach me how to play. And we just had these acoustic guitars, and there was a steel string acoustic guitar that my dad had, and he had one of the like the flamenco nylon string guitars, and basically he showed me a few chords and just a few little easy songs, and then I just completely dedicated myself to teaching myself how to play guitar, and I've I never expected I'd end up where I am today, doing as an 11-year-old, teaching myself how to play and that, and so that's how that happened.
Well, now 11-year-olds have YouTube. What did you have in order for you to teach yourself how to play?
Well, I had a lot of time. And because I wasn't the sort of kid that was out, wrecking the town and getting into mischief. I was just dedicated to music so much that I just sat there and learned and just did everything by ear. And and I had my dad to help me out in little bits and bats, but that's how I did. And then after that, I at school, when I got to about like 14 years old, 15 years old, I got together with some friends, some like-minded friends, and we formed an early band together. And when we left school, we carried on doing that, and and we played some pretty decent shows, for young people,
Do you remember the first song that you learned how to play from start to finish on a guitar?
Yeah, it was. It's a bit embarrassing, actually. It was Home on the Range. I don't know whether you know that song. It's an old, old song, a really old cowboy song from way back when, I think it's about 3 or 4 chords. And that's what I remember I remember once when I learned that, I went downstairs to show my mum. I says, "Look, I've learned this song," and it would just, and she just like smiled, you know.
But I'm sure for you, it's super important to have the support of your parents throughout this whole process. I don't
Oh
think you
yeah,
would have been where you are today if it wasn't for them.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, my parents. I mean, to this day, they both, my mum and dad, they both support me 100% in everything I do, and a lot of people don't have that. I mean, getting into heavy metal. I mean, some of the bands that I've listened to over the years. I mean, if my parents were super religious, they would just, you know, have people disagree with they call it the devil's music. I never had any of that. It was just supporting before was working, they used to buy me albums and things like that. I was really lucky, really.
So your first little band with your friends perhaps was not as successful as My Dying Bride, obviously. Otherwise, you'd still be playing with them,
Yeah.
touring the world. At what point did you figure it out that okay, like I enjoy playing, I'm going to dedicate myself to this, but I can actually do this as a living, and this is going to be my career, this is going to be my path? Was at that time when you started that band?
No, well, that is something that ideally that is something that I would love to do for a living, but unfortunately it's something I've never been able to do for a living. um, I mean, I'm sure when you spoke to Aaron a few months ago, he may have said that even now that with My Dying Bride, we're not a full-time band.
Mm-hmm.
We all have day jobs. Um, we do a select amount of gigs every year if we can, which obviously that's gone to that's gone now because of the COVID thing. But I think I mean, it's something I've always wanted to do. I mean, if I could do that for a living, I'd do that tomorrow, definitely. But the band that I formed always back in the day was a band called Garden of Remembrance, which is a doom metal band, and we actually managed to support My Dying Bride on the Turn Loose the Swans tour. We did managed to get on a support slot at just the one of the local shows in Bradford where we live, and it was like a dream come true because we were all huge My Dying Bride fans, and and then years down the line, who'd have thought I'd end
I
up
know.
playing for.
A life goes full circle. Sometimes it has a funny way of working itself out,
Yeah, definitely.
So getting into your 5 most influential guitar players, I think it's only fair that we start with Adrian Smith. I mean, you already mentioned him.
Yeah.
You saw him live on that VHS live
Yeah.
concert. You have the vinyl. You had the tape for Christmas.
Yeah.
What was it specifically about his playing style that captivated you?
I think with the thing with Adrian Smith, I mean, I've never been a fan of guitar solos. I think the main reason is because I can't play them. But I think certain people, certain artists like Adrian Smith, they'll play a piece of music and it completely blows me away. And some of his guitar solos, I mean, for instance, the thing that one of the solos he does in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, even I listen to that today and it gives me goosebumps. It's so intricate and perfect, and he's one of those guys. I just think everything he does is perfect. He plays with precision and style, and he's just really is an inspirational character. And I think that Maiden as a band, everyone talks about when Bruce Dickinson left Iron Maiden, and I think that they suffered more when Adrian left the band musically, because they released the 2 albums, No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark, which are okay albums, but you knew when Adrian had come back in that band because the songwriting was far more superior, and I think he's fantastic. It really is.
Is he, in your opinion, is he like a complete musician? Like the guy can, like the guitar is flawless, the solos, the composition, his persona when he's on stage, like he's not the kind of guy that just stands in a corner and plays. Like he has a little bit of a flamboyant playing style, which is perfect for Iron Maiden, by the way. So do you think he's like complete from that perspective?
Yes, I do. I agree with that. Every bit of that, definitely. Yeah. We, me and some friends, we went to see them on the Book of Souls tour a couple of years ago, and I think they were playing Wasted Years, and he kicked in at the solo, and I just watched him, and I was like, and I looked at my jaw just hit the floor, even after all these years, and I looked around at my friend, and he was just the same. He was looking at me like going, "Wow," you know.
Yeah, he has an uncanny ability to with the solos to really understand what the song calls for and then
Yeah,
give it exactly what it needs to
yeah,
make the song complete, but to bring a little bit of the life
mm,
that the track had, but
yeah,
bring it into a different perspective with the way he plays the
mm,
solos. His solos are magnificent.
yeah. It's almost like he's written the solo and then they've written the song around it. If you know what
Yeah,
I mean. Yeah.
exactly.
Mm,
Either the solo went first and then the song came because of the way the solo sounds, or he
mm,
has a really complete, deep understanding of
mm,
not just how the song sounds, but the emotion that is built within the track itself, and then he
mm.
transports that emotion into the way the solo sounds. So the solo becomes the exteriorization of how the track felt inside from an emotional perspective. It's really incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
It's
I'm a big
amazing.
fan of his playing style as well.
Yeah,
Next on your list, another incredible name is Tony Iommi.
yeah,
I was not shocked that you had
uh,
him on your list. Uh,
yeah.
when did you discover Tony Iommi? How
I
young were you?
um I was it was the again really I was really young. I was probably 12 or 13 when I first heard Black Sabbath, and there was a friend of mine. He used to live across the street. He was older than me, and he invited me over to because the only band I was listening to at the time was Iron Maiden, and he says, "Oh, you like Iron Maiden? Come over here to my house and listen. I'll show you some other things." And he played some Ozzy Osbourne albums, and then got another prop. He he handed this to me, and I saw this album artwork, and it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, the
It's
album artwork is incredible. It still holds
and
up.
and to me, this album it says so much about the album itself. It's an old like an old painting with something sinister hiding in it, and I think that sums up the music on that album. I think it's a really sort of 70s sound, rock, hard rock, blues sounding album, but within the music there's a line of something that's quite sinister about it, and I think that's great. I think, and as far as the Tony Iommi goes, I mean, he's responsible for some of the greatest music ever written, and then I think if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be sat here talking about this now.
Yeah,
Because
100%. Now, when you saw that album at your friend's house, I mean, that's quite the departure from Iron Maiden.
mm,
What impressed you first? Was it the cover, or once he put the needle down?
um, first it was the cover, but when we started listening to it, the opening track is the song Black Sabbath, and it starts with a thunderstorm, and it makes the hairs on your arms stand up, if you know what I mean. Um, and then that opening riff comes in, and I couldn't believe that that album was so old. It come from 1970. Songs probably written 69, something like that, and and it sounded so. I couldn't believe something so heavy was so old, and I think it's the songs on that album and albums to follow is forged the doom metal thing. I mean, that track is the first ever doom metal riff ever written, in my opinion. Um, and I sort of, I mean, I could never ever be as good as someone like Tony Iommi, but I can. He's influenced me in writing riffs rather than solos and things like that. I think that's why I prefer songs with riffs in, um, Black Sabbath, what the Hand of Doom track, which is on Paranoid. That's slow and heavy,
Mhm.
and uh, Under the Sun, which is on Volume 4. That's another great great early doom inspired, the song that's inspired a lot of the doom metal bands. Well, I think so anyway.
So from him, you obviously realize the greatness of the player. Like this guy is just out of this world. Like he's on a different planet. So what you
Mm.
took from him is not necessarily a playing style. You took more the inspiration of how he constructed the tracks.
Yes, that's right. I think it's that sort of dark sound, slow and sinister, I would say. And another thing about Tony Iommi is I know everybody's going through a lot. Musicians are struggling at the moment, and it's a very stressful time for for people in bands who can't get out there and perform and do anything like that. But I mean, I read Tony Iommi's book. I don't know whether you've read that. I've got the Iron Man, it's called. And there's there's a section in this book, and it's about the day that it was his last day working in a factory in Birmingham, and he ended up cutting his ends of his fingers off in an accident. He was due to go and just be a full-time musician, and on his last day at work, that happened. And for somebody to get through that and become person and talented musician that he is today, it's very inspiring indeed.
Yeah, to come from that adversity to where he is now, it shows you that sometimes we make mountains out of anthills.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Wow. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about Tony Iommi and Black Sabbath in general, since he's a huge influence on you, do you feel like sometimes you're listening to them and the heaviness of the music is not necessarily the heaviness that we're used to? It's not like they're playing Cannibal Corpse, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the music is heavy, but it's not necessarily because it sounds heavy. It just has this really heavy atmosphere, almost like this mist that
Yeah,
just engulfs everything.
definitely. Yeah, I think it's quite a unique style that they have, especially on the early albums. I don't it's hard, it's difficult to explain, but yeah, it's like you get your bands like Cannibal Corpse, they're super heavy, and but I don't know. It's a difficult one, is that?
Yeah,
I'd have to. Yeah.
they were definitely ahead of the curve.
Mm,
Like like these guys. It's just sometimes you think about it. I was listening to the other day. I was listening to Black Sabbath, and my son came up, and I was like, and I like original vinyl, like original pressing,
yeah.
and I was listening to it, and I was saying to him, man, these guys, like, they were making this stuff when nobody was even thinking about it. Like nobody
Yeah.
was even at that time. People were listening to psychedelic music and all sorts of different
That's right,
stuff,
yeah.
like disco, and I don't
Yeah.
know. There was all sorts of weird stuff happening in the music world at the time, and these
Yeah.
guys thought, this is what we're gonna do. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
kind of like we just don't give a shit. This is our style. This is our sound, and this is what we're gonna go with.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just the music as well. It's the lyrical
The
content,
lyrics.
which is really strange for bands in that time of you're coming on the back of the psychedelic flower power thing from the 60s, and then suddenly these guys are writing about drug abuse and Satan and like the things that are happening in the Vietnam War, and people, I think it genuinely scared people back in the day.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's quite the
Mm,
departure, and it's not like there was a path. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not like it's not like you could see the progression that another band was kind of in between, and then there was another band that kind of started to morph
yeah.
into what Black Sabbath. No, these guys came out of like nowhere. There was no
Mm,
mold. There was no conceived idea that there was another band that was kind of guiding them into this light. They just showed up, and this is
mm,
us. Take it or leave it.
yeah, I know. I mean, another thing with them is the early Black Sabbath, and when Ronnie James Dio was singing for them, that Tony Iommi has had that vision to change the music style completely. Because if you listen to the albums with Dio on or Tony Martin and the albums with Ozzy on, it's like two different bands, but yet he still had success with them, and I think that's quite good. Is that?
Yeah, being able to adjust to the tools that he has.
Yeah,
Not trying to make something fit where it doesn't fit. It's like, this is
that's
what I
right.
got, so let me work around it and make the best that I can with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they're very when you look at Ozzy, you look at Dio, I mean, two different styles, two different approaches. I don't think you can try to fit one era into the other era. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think
No.
you have to adapt and create something that's still Black Sabbath, but
Mm.
with somebody else singing it, you know?
Yeah.
Not
I
easy.
agree. No, definitely not.
Next name on your list, James Hetfield, Metallica, Mr. Metallica himself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Hedfield is one of the best rhythm guitar players out there, in my opinion, and he
You're not
is.
alone, by the way. Let me
No,
just stop you here for a second. When I
yeah,
start doing these chats with musicians about the other musicians that influence them,
yeah,
and I start talking to guitar players, James Hetfield's name has come up almost every single time. I don't think
yeah,
I've talked to one single guitar player, maybe one, who
yeah,
didn't have James Hetfield as a huge influence. And I was surprised because as a fan, when I think of Metallica and when I think of guitar playing, I think Kirk Hammond.
yeah.
But you guys who know better than me, who know better
Mm.
than us, the fans, everybody is coming with James Hetfield. Not one single person mentioned Kirk Hammond. So
No,
what is it about James Hetfield that
I
he's
think
so important for other guitar players?
I think with Hetfield, he's one of the best guys at doing the downstroke picking for that fast thrashy guitar playing that he does, and for a guy to play that well and sing very well as well at the same time, I mean, that is a talent. I don't know anyone who can do that as good as him. And I remember in the early days when first Metallica I heard was Master of Puppets and then Justice. I bought those two albums on the same day, and I couldn't believe how great they were. You know, it was like the heaviest thing I'd heard at the time, and it was just wow. It's just so inspiring. Um, I think Metallica as a band, I think it's really, really popular for people to slate them these days. You know, people talk about the Black Album, they sold out, you know, and all this, and I just see a band who's just tried different things, you know, and I think the success it speaks for itself. If you know what I'm saying. But yeah,
You find it weird with metal fans in general because they want their favorite bands to be acknowledged. But
yeah,
when those bands become acknowledged, then they sold out. So it's like it's a
yeah,
no-win situation. So,
mm,
they complain when their favorite band doesn't get playtime on the radio or doesn't get a Grammy
yeah,
nomination or whatever the case might be.
yeah,
And then when they do, it's like, oh, they sold out. Now they're everywhere.
yeah,
Now they're playing on the, like
yeah.
just there's no winning.
I know. If you're in a band and someone says to you, right, you've got a choice. You can play crappy little clubs and then go to work on Monday morning, or you can be a billionaire and you can play football stadiums around the world and be, you know, there won't be many who would choose the first one. You know, it's just madness.
I don't think that would be any.
No, and I mean, I agree. The last, I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of the latest Metallica album, but I thought Death Magnetic was excellent, and a lot that didn't really go down very well with people. I thought it was an excellent album.
Actually, I didn't mind the last one, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. I thought it was
Yeah,
I thought it was, considering everything else they've done since the Black Album, I was actually not. I was pretty hyped about it. I thought it was
yeah,
good.
mm,
Metallica is a band that's really hard because they've changed so much over the years,
mm,
and everybody looks at Metallica as almost like the birth of Jesus, right? Like there's before
yeah,
the birth of Jesus, and then there's after the birth of Jesus. And with
yeah,
Metallica, is the Black Album. There's
yeah,
Metallica before the Black Album, and then there's Metallica after the Black Album.
yeah,
I don't think for them, maybe you disagree with me, but it doesn't matter what they release now. That for those that always compare them to what happened before the Black Album, it's never going to be
yeah,
good enough.
yeah. Oh, I agree. I definitely agree. I said that to some of my friends, like, oh no, 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 I can't. They say I just can't listen to them anymore. Even the old stuff, can't listen to them. And it's like, wow, well, you've got Ride the Lightning, and you've got Kill 'Em All, and you've got Master of Puppets, three amazing albums, and you're just gonna, just because you didn't like what they're doing now, you're just gonna sack the rest of their career off now. It's madness.
No, I agree with you. For as much as I didn't like some of the stuff that came after the Black Album, not
Yeah.
everything was crap. And I
No.
and I think uh, once again, I think it comes down to that aspect that fans have of wanting their bands to succeed, but at the same time not wanting them to succeed to the point where they become what you would consider mainstream. And Metallica's kind of gone mainstream. And then once you start doing some of the things that they've done, collaborations with other artists like Lady Gaga and all this stuff, I think it rubs some of the hardcore fans the wrong way. But
Yeah.
I think it's just they've reached a point where they can be as creative as they want to be,
Yeah.
and they don't really answer to anybody. I mean,
No.
there's something empowering about being able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, they're still selling out these huge arenas, and
Yeah.
week in, week out. So I don't think they've lost that many fans, really, have they?
No, it's an interesting thing. I think with Metallica, the last time I saw them, it was in a big arena. I paid like $250 a ticket. Too much money, if you ask me. But it was a big arena, it was sold out, and they have that allure. Like they have, I don't know, they have that it factor. I mean, their career is just outstanding. What they've done throughout their career. I just
Yeah.
think they become a very polarized band. For some, like I said, there's Metallica before the Black Album, and then for some, there's Metallica after the Black Album. And I don't think they can. Their brains does not allow people to allow those two worlds to coexist together.
No. And then
But
there's a whole thing. If you like Megadeth, you can't like Metallica as well, which is nonsense.
yeah,
You
when I was a kid, there was a lot of that. Like, if you listen to Megadeth, you can't listen to Metallica. I was like, whatever, man. Like, what do I care? You know
Yeah,
what I
I
mean?
like
Like,
them both.
I just want to listen to good music,
Yeah.
regardless of what's going on, feuds
Yeah.
or whatever the case might be. I mean, the way you got to look at it is because of that whole issue with Dave Mustaine, you end up with two great bands instead of
Yeah.
just one.
Yeah. I know the fans are the winners at the end of the day, aren't
Yeah, exactly,
they?
exactly. Now, when you look at James Hetfield and you look at the progression that he has across his career, do you see any drop at all from him across from the time of And Justice for All, Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, all the way up until now, Hardwired to Self-Destruct? Has he gotten better with age? Is he like a fine wine?
I think he has, yeah. I think he's certainly improved. I think he's improved his songwriting range wise. I mean, I wasn't a fan of the load and reload period of Metallica, but you can't say they're not really well written songs. I mean, he's brought a lot of more sort of ballads in, I suppose, if you like, which are great. Um, I think he's all about the riffs that drive that band are all come out of his head, and he's I think long may it continue with him, because I think he's great. I really do.
So when you picked up that Master of Puppets and Injustice for All, you were taken by his riffs. Did
Yeah,
you try to emulate the sound, the style?
definitely. Yeah, I've tried, but
The key word is tried.
when you're a teenage kid and you've got a crappy little amp this big, and and a really cheap guitar, it's difficult. But yeah, I've always tried to play like him, but nah, he's just fantastic.
The next name on your list kind of surprised me a little bit because it at least to me, it felt like it came a little bit out of left field, and that is Trevor Paris of Obituary.
Oh yeah. Um,
Like,
I'm
knowing you, knowing your playing style, knowing all the other names on the list, this one was like,
mm,
wow, Obituary?
yeah. Yeah, I was when it comes to death metal, um, I don't like 100 mile an hour all the way through. I like heavy and slow, and I like bands to mix it up a little bit, like the Obituary do. And I just think, I mean, I remember going to we had a venue in Bradford back in the 80s and 90s called the Queen's Hall. It's closed now, but all the Florida death metal bands used to come over and play, and I used to go down there. And I saw Obituary on the End Complete tour. I think it was '92, and I remember standing there right in front of Trevor Perez, and there was just a mass of hair, and he's there playing this souped up Fender Stratocaster guitar, which is bizarre for a death metal band to play a Fender Strat. But it was just so heavy, and he was just like a powerhouse of just this really down-tuned, dirty sounding guitar, and I just thought it was great. And I've seen him several times before, and I think he's just great. It's Trevor. I think he's got a very unique sound as well. That there's not many other death metal bands have got that. When you hear Obituary, you know it's him.
I was just going to say that and I've said that to my son, that you don't need to listen to 10 seconds, even less than 10 seconds. You know you're listening to them. They have a very unique sound, a very unique style. Do you find it that the way he plays and the sound that he creates has a little bit of a doom feel to it? Because it's not just your prototypical death metal, like, you know, cutting bodies up in pieces kind of death metal sound. It kind of, it feels like it's almost, you're getting dragged through the mud. You know.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good way of putting it. Actually, it's funny because when I first joined My Dying Bride, we were learning the song. I was learning the songs, and we were down at the rehearsal room, and Andy, with the other guitar player, was telling me, he said, "Oh, you play one of those Obituary chords there." And I said, "Oh, that's funny that you call that an Obituary chord. I used to call that the My Dying Bride chord. It's weird." But I know exactly what he meant. It's like a really heavy chord that they use quite often.
So how was it for you seeing him on that tour and being there in person and watching it? Were you focused on what he was doing, and what do you feel have you taken from his style or his playing?
I can't. I'm not. I mean, it's a long time ago, but I was more. It was more his stage persona than what he was actually playing. If you understand, it was like this powerhouse of a man, just proper going for it on stage, banging his head, and it was just inspiring. It was really good to watch, and influence wise on me. Like the other band that I play in, Valafar, the Obituary of influenced a lot of my songwriting for that band. I don't know whether you've listened to Valafar, but we have a track called Death From Within, and that was very, very much, I was listening to a lot of Obituary at the time when I wrote that song. So you can probably hear that in the riffs in that song.
Are they still one of your favorite death metal bands?
Yeah, definitely. If I had to pick a death metal band, my favorite, it would definitely be Obituary.
Yeah, they're one of my favorites as well. I just find it very unique sound. Like I said, that dragging through mud kind of mushing. My son calls it mushing. It just has this mushing sound to it that
It is, yeah. The way they mix that as well. I mean, there's loads of bands try to recreate that kind of sound, and it just gets lost in the mix. But they seem to do it. I mean, even live, they seem to be able to mix that tone, so it's really effective, and it's got clarity as well.
I agree. And they haven't lost anything. Like the album that I discovered them with was The Incomplete. So that was the first album from them that I listened to. And from that point until now, they're still the same band. They sound exactly the same. They haven't changed their formula. They have their way of approaching, and man, they still make incredible tracks.
Yeah. I mean, that's when you buy an album, you know what you're getting from a bit.
Oh yeah. There's no surprises. You know what I mean? No. They're one of those bands that have stayed consistent throughout the time. Yeah. And when I mean consistent, I don't mean repetitive. It's not like if you listen to one album, you've listened to them all. There's still a lot of variety in terms of how it comes at you, but the soundscape is very consistent. The style, the approach is very consistent, which works perfectly for them.
Yeah. I mean, I got, I think the first album I got was Cause of Death, I think it is. Yeah, The Cause of Death is the first one I got. And I used to play, there's a track on there called Turned Inside Out. It's a fantastic name for a song. But I used to play that over and over again. It's such a heavy track, I love it.
Yeah, I watched the video for The Incomplete. And watching the video, because the video, I don't know if you remember the video, but the video has like live footage mixed in as part of the video. So you could see them on stage, how they look like on stage. Man, all you see is hair and like I said, it has a little bit of a Doom vibe because it feels like they're dragging the guitars all the way through the ground. It's just so grimy, you know, it's dirty. Like there's all these different feelings. And at the time, I remember, you know, we're looking at 92, 91, 92.
Yeah.
At the time, death metal bands didn't sound like that at all.
Yeah.
They had a more visceral sound to them. So these guys were kind of mixing a little bit of Doom, a little bit of, you could even go as far as Black Sabbath, and then bringing into that death metal Florida style that they created. It's theirs.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, there's no other bands sound like them, definitely. I think the other bands around at the time, like Cannibal Corpse, Death, Massacre, and bands like that, they are great bands, all of them, but Obituary just stand out to me.
For me as well. Yeah. Last name on your list, Brent Hines of Mastodon.
Yes.
So this was a later find.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I got into Mastodon when they brought out the album Leviathan, and I can't remember what. I think I bought that album. I was reading a metal magazine. I was just looking at reviews of albums. You know, I was looking for something new, and I saw the photograph of the band, and I thought, oh, there with the beards, and I thought they must be a heavy band. They look cool, covered in tattoos and what have you, you know. and anyway, so I went out to the record shop and I bought Leviathan, and it didn't disappoint, and it was not what I expected, because they've got a knack of mixing like a weird sort of psychedelic music, but heavy, which is another thing that I find their music very interesting, where it goes. And Brent Hines, after seeing him play live, he's another one just completely blew my mind watching him play live. And I had the pleasure of meeting him a few years ago, and I said to him, it was just sat there cool with his aviator shades on, you know, looking
like a rock star.
Yeah, and it was really nice actually. And he signed the I had a tour program. I think it was at Bloodstock Festival, and he signed the thing for me. And I said to him, I just wanted to say, you guys have just got the best guitar tone I've ever heard. And he was like, wow, thank you very much. There's not many people say that, them kind of things to us, you know. That's really cool of you to say. And I said, oh no, it's he inspired me to go out and buy a Gibson Flying V guitar as well, because that's another thing. I love them guitars, and to see him up there playing, I thought I'm gonna have to get one of those, which I did.
Then you came home and you tried to tune it the same way, and
yeah,
and play some Mastodon.
And the neck just goes like that, yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. I want to backtrack to what you said. You looked at their picture, the beards, the tattoos. These guys must be heavy. That's such an old school thing to say, though, because growing up, for me, I remember watching videos, music videos, like on MTV, and sometimes you would see your favorite artist or your favorite band, and they would be wearing a T-shirt from another band. And I would say, similar to what you just said, which is, wow, if he's wearing that shirt, that band's got to be good.
Yeah.
And then I would go out and try to find something from that band on that shirt to listen to, because it was such a statement for somebody to have that shirt. Is like, oh, the guy wouldn't be wearing the shirt unless the band is good. So I got to go check it out. It's such an old school thing to say, because, you know, you used to look at bands. I used to go to the record store and I would go through albums that I didn't know who the bands were. And I used to look at the back of the record to see if there was a picture of the band. And based on I would base it on a couple of things. Was the picture and the label. Because there were some labels that you were almost guaranteed to get a good album from. Like Metal Blade was one of them. Megaforce at the time. Roadrunner was another one. So if I saw that the band was being released on Roadrunner and they had a picture and they all had long hair and I was like, oh, these guys got to be good, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes they were.
I did that with Sepultura, actually. When the Arise album came out, I'd never heard of them. And I thought, that album cover looks good. I looked, it was like, oh, this is on Roadrunner. Yeah, I'm going to have this.
The same thing happened to me, like not with Sepultura, but with a lot of bands. I would look at the label. I would look at the picture of the band. I would look at the label. And the label was always an influence for me to pick up the record if I had never heard the band, just because you, like I said, you were almost guaranteed that you were going to get something good if it was released by a specific label. Like back in the early 90s, Earache was another one. Like if I saw a release by Earache, I almost like, oh, this has got to be good, because they have so many good bands. You kind of assume. It was not always the case. I picked up some duds.
Yeah, you always it's like Russian roulette sometimes, isn't it? You know, you always pick out something, and it's like a shot in the dark. But I must admit, most of the time, the ones that I bought were actually successes in the end.
So with going back to Brent, so you got to meet him. He signed the program for you.
Yeah.
Did you get to talk a little bit more about his playing style and how you
No,
discovered
it was one of them things. It was a big queue. It was like sign this, and then you had to go.
Oh.
No photographs, you know, one of them. So
Yeah, you didn't get a chance to socialize.
No, unfortunately not. But
Are they still a band that you listen to on a regular basis?
Yeah, I absolutely love Mastodon. They're one of my favorite bands. I think I like bands that sound different, and I could never be a metal fan who listens to just one genre of metal. You know, if like I couldn't be like, you know, if I like some black metal stuff, but I don't like all black metal albums. Same with death metal, or I like my music to be interesting and different, to, you know, the things that stand out. And I think Mastodon, I mean, some of it's quite mainstream, really, but some of it's heavy as hell. So I think I like that
Eclectic approach.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're a band that with every album, you're never really sure what you're going to get. And then within the album themselves, you're still not really sure what you're going to get.
No.
Super creative guys. I don't think they put any boundaries on themselves whatsoever.
No, I think that's a good thing, because I think if you when you're writing songs, if you try to stick to one channel, eventually you're just going to run out of ideas. So I think it's good that they do that.
All right, Neil. So this is your list, your 5 most influential guitar players: Adrian Smith, Tony Iommi, Trevor Perez, Brent Hines, and the great James Hedfield. Quite the list.
Yeah.
Quite the journey. Quite the journey for you.
Yeah, it's a difficult list as well, because I could go on forever. There's so many inspirational musicians out there who have inspired me over the years. But I mean, just to pick 5, it's difficult.
and I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you one last question that's perhaps even more difficult than asking you to name 5, which is, if you look at these 5, how much of these 5 are in you? Like which one is the most prevalent in the way you play and the way you create music?
I'd probably say Tony Iommi. I would have said, purely because when I'm writing, I like to try and write memorable riffs. And out of all of that list, I think that guy has achieved that over the years. I remember one time, I think it was Rob Zombie in an interview said, nobody writes original metal riffs because Tony Iommi has already written them. And you're just doing versions of what he's already wrote. So, and I agree with him.
That's a great line. I love that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, Neil, thank you very much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it. This was an absolute
problem.
pleasure.
Thank you, Pedro. It's been nice to be here.
No, it was a pleasure. It was my pleasure to have you on the channel and to chat about guitar playing and to chat about you. It always makes for fun times for me.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this, and you keep up the good work with your channel. I always watch what you do. So
well, thank you. And you guys keep up the good work with your music and releasing some tracks here and there. I know you would have loved to be on the road to support the album and to support the EP, but let's hope that there's going to be some light at the end of the tunnel and we'll get to see you guys, if not this year, at least early into 2022.
Yeah, I hope so. It's been a bit of a blow. Most of last year, and it looks like some of this year is going to be wrecked as well with the pandemic. But hopefully we'll get out there get back on stage eventually.
Yeah, it'll make everything feel a lot better, you know. After we go through this, I think everybody's going to come out at the end appreciating everything that we have in our lives a little bit more. So those things that perhaps you hate about being on the road, living off of bus, all of those things perhaps are going to be welcomed because,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I certainly miss the whole being out on there, out playing live, and just even just seeing people and speaking to fans and meeting people. It's just you can't take that kind of stuff for granted anymore.
Yeah, I was telling my son one of the things that I used to hate the most about going to live shows is getting hit in the face with people's hair all the time. And I was telling him, man, what I would give right now to be in that situation, you know? Like I remember like sitting there like, oh my God, man, like I'm trying to watch and hair getting smacked in the face because I'm normally in the front.
Yeah,
And people in the front are just like windmilling. So all I see is like hair. And I was like, man, like really, I'm never going to complain ever again about anything, you know, as far as like those small little things that we complain about. I think if there's one thing that I take from this pandemic is to really appreciate everything, even sometimes the things that bother you.
Yeah, I think before all this started, there was a concert down in London, and I was saying it was Moonspell and Rotting Christ playing together, and we're like, I really want to go to that, and I'm like, oh, it's London, no, it's got to pay for the train fare, we've got to do that. So, do you know, I just wish I would have just gone, because now of this, I thought, just obviously just taken that for granted, and it was a big mistake.
That is something that I've never, well, I shouldn't say never, but that I've changed my ways because a few years back, Motorhead was playing in a town maybe like an hour and a half from where I live, and I didn't go. And I was like, man, do I really want to drive for an hour and a half? I know it's Motorhead, but do I want to drive for an hour and a half? You know what? I'll just wait until they come back and they play in my city, right?
Yeah.
And then Lemmy passed away 3 months later, and I was like, you know what? Never again. I don't care now. I'm gonna go. And from that point on, I made a point to go to as many shows as humanly possible. Not this year, obviously, because of the pandemic last year, but the year before, I think I went to over 120 shows. So I just don't want to have that regret of not going to see a band that I really like, and then something happening, and I'm never going to be able to see that band again.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me years and years ago. Pantera was playing in Manchester, and I was like, should I get a ticket? I don't know, Anyway, shortly after that, the band split up, and then obviously Dimebag's gone now. Vinnie Paul's
You have a
gone.
horrible track record. I mean, after the Pantera thing, you should have gone to the Rotting Christ show last.
I should have done really. Yeah,
that should have been the lesson that you learned from the Pantera gig. Is like, no, I'm not going to miss that Rotting Christ Moonspell show.
I know. No, I'll certainly, when everything gets back to normal, I ain't going to miss nothing. I'm going. That's it.
I'm going to hold you up to it. If I see you commenting that there's a show and you're not going,
you're far.
I'm going to give you some shit for it. All right, man. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. All the best. Stay safe, stay healthy, and all the best for your loved ones.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you take care of yourself. Nice talking to you, Pedro.
Nice talking to you.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.